All right, founders, entrepreneurs, managers, C-suite executives, whoever's going to be watching this, I'm here with Jay DeAmato. I've been hanging out with Jay for probably a little over a year now. It's been fantastic. Jay is the founder, and he co-founder and one of the main minds behind Conversion Coach. He also works with me advising startup founders at startups.com. And he's got some ideas. He's got some thoughts about sales. And I got to tell you, this is one of the main weak points when it comes to founders and entrepreneurs. What happens is they start the business, a startup, and then they got to go sell it. They got this great idea, going to change the world. Then they have to do the hard work of selling it. And that's where they start to stall. And then on top of which, let's say they do a good job and they start selling, and then they get rounds of funding. And then what happens? Their startup grows and their sales targets. And then they got to bring in a sales staff. Maybe they're in that type of business where they need a business development team or sales team, and they have no wherewithal whatsoever on building a sales team, and they flounder even there. They're throwing money, and let's just be straight. Like, it can be a big black hole when it comes to finances. And so Jay solves these problems. And let me just highlight, we talk about this all the time. Sales managers do not have enough time to coach salespeople. I would venture even say founders don't take the time to get coached on sales. And this leads to poor conversion, slow velocity, and conversion leads to traction, which is velocity, and a lack of velocity kills a startup. You can't get that traction. You can't attract those investors, and you're not making money. And then turnover of salespeople, you can't build a team, right? Like, the team doesn't do work. You're so busy working in your business and trying to do those sales, you don't work on it. So you're not doing all the strategic stuff. And, a little heads up, Jay asked me before we're talking, and he said, how irreverent can I be? I said, go for it. Let's say some contrarian things that, because sales is as old as time, my man. You know this. So let's just start off with, okay, let's qualify who you are and why do you have the gumption, the wherewithal, basically the credibility to talk about sales. Give us a bit of your background and tell us the reason you're an authority in this subject.
Oh man. Well, I'm just a normal person, man. I got into sales by accident, like most people of my generation. It's really lovely to see people aspiring to get sales jobs these days, but it definitely wasn't like that 25 years ago. And I don't know what gives me the authority. I don't think anything. I have to earn that every day. You don't get stamped with anything like that. I think why I love being in the trenches and figuring out sales problems is because I had great mentors early who really taught me the ropes. And if I hadn't had that, I wouldn't have made it. There's no way I would have made it. It was way too mentally taxing. There's just so much pressure, especially early on. And and back then too, and everybody suffers from some sort of sales reluctance, but there was a little bit of like the role rejection, right? Like nobody's like proud to be like, I'm in sales, where nowadays there's a lot of pride in the profession that it's starting to seep in, at least, which is a really healthy thing. But yeah, back then, no, it was, how do I tell people what I do without telling them I'm in sales? Once I started admitting that I was in sales, everything changed because I was able to come from a really proud place, and understanding really what sales was all due to those great mentors who taught me, this is communication, this is caring, this is empathy, this is self-awareness, this is so many different things, listening. So yeah, and to hear you talk about all the places that it can break down, like early founder stage, poor founders, we talk to them all the time, right? They have no idea what a big deal sales is, and it scares them. And my heart breaks for founders that are in that position, which is why I love donating time to talk to them, because it's not as scary as it seems, right? Like once you get in and you really just understand, it may be complex, but it doesn't need to be scary, right? Simplify it down. It's just
Yeah,
people talking to people, right?
there's that emotional component, which, sales reluctance is an emotional psychological thing. You and I have discussed this before, but before we get to that, what are the types of clients that you coached? What scale, what results have you seen? Let's establish a baseline that we're not just two kids sitting around, oh, we got some good ideas. You've got legitimate experience. What kind of work have you been up to?
Yeah, I mean, everything from taking really large organizations and transforming the methodology in the way in which they sell and making sure that learning sticks and that coaching is disciplined, for some really huge growth, all the way down to your Series A and Series B companies, that are mid-market and enterprise sellers. That, our sweet spot is anywhere north of 50 reps. They've got their product market fit, they've got their marketing, they just want to be better at sales, right? And they don't have the time or the bandwidth, or maybe even the coaching expertise, because one thing that gets also misunderstood is that management and coaching is the same thing, or that all managers should be great coaches. And that's absolutely not the case. They are different motions, right? And the way I think about it is, a coach is somebody who can really go in, understand a human being's strengths, understand what their goals are, and work with them to make sure they're elevating at their craft. They're getting better at their craft. And that starts in a trench, right? Like listening to calls and analyzing them, which some people may find extremely boring, and we just love that, right? Like we never get sick of that stuff. So that's where all the real beautiful growth comes from in my eyes, is sit down, listen to a call, break it down, be vulnerable, and come up with a plan and stay disciplined with that. And every time you do that, every time you have two willing people, right? The coach is willing to serve, and the person learning is willing to be vulnerable and wants to grow, then you always get great results. You get that traction, you get the growth, and you get high morale, better conversion. You mentioned velocity, like sidebar. One of the things to pay attention to early on in your sales journey, whether you're a first-time founder or you're just growing your first team, is velocity, right? If deals are happening pretty quickly, you have something. If they're really slow, something is wrong. Now, it might be a people thing, it might be a process thing, but if you don't have your sales buttoned up, how are you going to know? How are you going to know if it's luck or skill that's losing or winning deals?
Yeah, that's a big thing. I teach founders all the time. Let's make common sense common practice, but first you got to make sense of it. How do you know? Right? So let's look, you're the founder. So, at like a tech entrepreneur, you've been working on basically creating a platform, but I want to highlight, maybe we can touch on that in a moment, but I want to highlight some of the results. So like we're talking an increased conversion rate of 12%, and I know in organizations, you increase, like, depending on the size, you increase your conversion rate by 1%.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that's really moving the needle. And then increase retention 50%, and then decrease ramp time is, converting at a high rate, decreasing the ramp time by 52%. It's a
Yep.
huge thing. And this is your 3-step process. You identify, so you got to gather the data, check it out. There's qualitative, quantitative data. You're going to coach them just in the spirit, which you just said. And then you're going to reinforce, which a lot of companies miss out on. They come in
Yes.
just for the quick fix, but then they don't go in for the adherence and the reinforcement, which is one of the major factors of sustainability and change. Okay, so we're establishing that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do an exercise. And just so people who are listening, I'm going to lay out 3 scenarios for my man Jay. Okay. First is the founder just starting out, just, maybe launch their version, and they got to go sell it. right?
Right.
So, okay, how would they start? Next is the founder, a little successful, needs to start a team. They're thinking about hiring a biz dev person or a salesperson, their first hire. And then the last is the manager might have been a founder before, but now is, sitting there and they're the CEO. Maybe they have a chief revenue officer or, some type of VP of sales and everything. And they're looking and going, our company is not performing and I want to know what to do about it in terms of sales. So we got 3 scenarios. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's set it up. So first, founder starting from scratch, just maybe it's got a little widget or has launched a little service company or something like that. What's your first advice? Like, I'm looking for the advice that a founder has listened to this, and as soon as they're done, they can go put it into action. What would you tell them?
I would tell them be obsessed with product market fit and finding the underserved part of the market who is screaming for a solution like this. And you should run anywhere from, you should be constantly doing product market fit interviews, asking experts, your ICP or whatever you are hypothesizing your ICP is, because that always changes too. And on the journey for product market fit, you're going to also be discovering who the ideal customer profile persona is. So you're making hypothesis at first, but you have to do interviews. You have to ask people for their expert advice. And there's an art to doing that well. And like, I don't know, have you ever checked this
Yep.
book out? I would say to every founder, get this, because you probably think you're running great product market fit interviews and you're not, right? If you're asking questions like, so what do you think? Right? People are going to be nice and say, wow, that's amazing. I can't believe it. Believe me, I made this mistake. I cannot tell you how many false positives we paid attention to along our journey before we got really good at asking questions and figuring out who's underserved and who's screaming for solutions. So for early stage founders, it's got to be an obsession over product market fit and discovering where the underserved market is, who's really screaming for a solution to the problem that you solve. A lot of the founders that I talk to, I use the advice that Will always says: tell me the problem that you solve, but don't tell me about you and your company. Like, first, we only have 30 minutes here. Tell me the problem that your product or service solves. And so many founders can't even answer that question or just don't, right? They go into their story. It's so powerful to, once you really understand the problem, it's so amazing that just what stating your problem does with clarity, how that just almost turns all sales conversations into accelerated velocity. You're getting straight to, I had a call this morning. I just stated our problem. And the head of sales said, I have all 3 of those problems. How do we, he's like, how do we get another meeting with everybody else? I'm like, see the power of the problem. So that's for the early stage founders, is even up through like 500,000 to $1 million in revenue, you should still be doing product market fit interviews, right?
Yeah, you're constantly refining. Now, okay, so let's pull out the principles here, behind this, because I totally dig it. This is the reason you and I get along. We're right in sync as far as what we teach the founders. Go find the underserved market and the problem. So, you may come across something that your competitors are not serving, or, you find that one feature, which is fantastic. Okay. So, like, for example, as you're building that ICP, like, for my coaching, I don't have any problems with sales. Clients come to me because I'm putting out there, I'm very clear on who I'm working with. I want to work with C-level executives who have at least 8-figure problems, who've tried everything else and they're stuck, and they want to look at it from a system strategic, perspective. I, narrow it down, because we know in sales, you try and sell to everybody, you sell to nobody. Okay. So
Yep.
let's say the founder's out there and they're like, okay, I've talked to people and, it's dual income, no kids, married couples and they're in this specific situation and they've been screaming for this and they're like, so thank you so much, etc. Let's say the founder has done all that stuff. Then what's next? Do they go out and how do they develop their elevator pitch? Do they go on and read a book? Do they have a script? How many phone calls do they make? Or tactically, what do they do after they figured out, okay, I have a solid thesis, a hypothesis on what product market fit is for me? Then what do they do?
Great. So there's two things that I would start with. One is process. So you have to have a process to keep your prospects in a funnel, right? And that's just your basic CRM process of where your prospects sit. A lot of founders operate out of spreadsheets and they push off like bringing on a CRM, and it's crazy. So that's one of the reasons why Conversion Coach has partnered with HubSpot is we want to make it easy for founders to get CRM up and running and feel the power of it from an early stage, right? You have your outreach, you have your connects, you have people that are in discovery, you have people that are in value prop. Now it's in decision mode, whatever, contract mode, and so on and so on. Every process is going to be a little bit different, unique to your company, but we like to help people build that out so that they have it and they can kind of set it and forget it. Now, the other part is your methodology. So this is the part that I think most people are not being taught and where founders really need the most help, which is once you get inside of a conversation, how do you navigate that to push the prospect through the funnel or pull them through, whatever language works better. And that is, okay, my introduction. What's inside an introduction? Well, you have a nice opening line, you have an introduction with a rapport building, you set a nice agenda, then you go through your discovery and how do you ask strategic questions and how do you qualify for budget and how do you find out what the decision process is. So that's the part that I feel like most founders are just scared because they don't know how to navigate those conversations. It's all just a big mystery. And really it's not, it's just people talking to people. And you just do it in a way that psychologically makes sense, right? You get the needs, you get the why. There's some biology, there's some psychology. But when you do sell a certain way, like getting the why up front, understanding the pain, how big the pain is, what the impact of it is, how is it impacting revenue, how's it impacting operations, how's it impacting morale? Like there's a lot to discover in there. And typically that's where people are faltering. So when I coach early stagers or even the founders that are starting to stand up their first team, like maybe their first BDRs or AEs, I want them to be excellent at discovery as fast as possible because it is the hardest part of the sales process and methodology. It's also 70% of lost deals are due to poor qualification. So for every company out there, if you want to just elevate and have a quick win, if you make everybody masters at the discovery process and the qualification process, you will see such huge results. It's not the easiest thing to do. Again, it's the hardest part, but qualification and then requalification, right? You're always like going back to that important stuff, the pain, the decision makers, all that stuff can change. So you can't just discover once and then think you have it all and then I'll just show the product and then it will close on its own. That's where most organizations fail is they forget to, every time you get on a call, you're getting face to face, you got to kind of requalify the deal. Let's just make sure these pains are the same, the implications are the same, has anything changed, have the goals changed, all that. So I know that was a lot, but process and methodology.
Yeah. So let's go through the linear. So figure out your product market fit testing, which all boils down to what's your UVP, unique value proposition, to the ICP, ideal customer profile. Then you have to figure out process, which is set up that spreadsheet or get on HubSpot, do something simple. All right. Don't kill a fly with a bazooka cannon.
But yes, a process. You need to have a funnel for your prospects.
Yeah. Okay. It can't just be willy-nilly. And then, but the main thing is figure out where are you going to learn or how are you going to select the best methodology, which, there's lots of different methodologies depending on the type of product you have, the type of person you are, etc. but you got to find that methodology. And then I'm thinking you just go, you try it and you're fine. It's like those iterative cycles. Question for you. What if I'm scared? Okay. Like I get out there and psychologically, like I am quaking in my boots. I tried my first ones. I'm getting rejected. It is like psychologically, you are like getting berated, barraged. You feel like everything's futile. You're a loser. What do I do?
Oh, it's so hard. I mean, that's such a great question. There are, it's the anxiety can be pretty crippling for people. Uh, so I think that the most important thing is before you go through a massive outreach push or a big sales motion, if you're a founder, whomever you are, you have to know what you're getting into, right? It's always a little bit less scary when you just face the ugly truths up front. This is what it is. It's a lot of rejection. It's a lot of grit, and there's a lot of grit and stamina required. You have to be able to be a goldfish, to steal from the great Ted Lasso, right? You can't take the results of one call and bring that energy into the next one. You have to reset, right? There's so much mental preparation and just mental regulation that goes into being great at sales. And I think that it's similar to founderhood, right? Like, why is it so painful being a founder? Why is it just as crippling? I've done both sales and founderhood. Founderhood to me is 50 times more stressful. And why is it? Because we feel often that the pain and the anxiety that we feel is unique, that nobody else is feeling. Like everything is happening to us. Nobody else is this terrified. Nobody else is having sleepless nights. Nobody else is worried about, putting food on the table. I've put so much of my life into this. I mean, it's all the same stuff. It's fear. It's fear-based. Once you know that there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of founders who are in the exact same boat, what happens? What immediately happens once you realize you're not alone?
You feel more comfortable.
And it's like this, right?
You can relate. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like instant. Like finding founder groups and startups.com was like that for me. It was the startup therapy podcast, and I heard an episode and it literally knocked me over, right? Like it saved me, dude. I was like contemplating like just quitting the entire business. I was so low. It's just one of those things that got me at the right time. Sales is similar, where it feels very isolating. And so you need to know that it's isolating, it's repetitive. Again, you need grit, you need stamina, you need optimism, you need all these things. You need the support. You're going to need to tap people. But if you know what you're getting into, it's not going to be as scary, and you shouldn't be afraid. And then the other big thing that I always tell people that are crippled with sales reluctance is you've got to remind yourself why you're doing this.
Yeah,
because the why is the end all be all that can get you through those bad days, that can get you through those bad weeks and months, right? And if you're always thinking about why, that the payoff feels so good that you will be uncomfortable for extended periods of time, right? Just to get to feel what you believe in working.
Well, and at the same time, I like what you say, know what you're getting into, have both eyes wide open. Because if you know your IC, you know your UVP, you're confident in it, you've done the work, you got the ICP. It's like training for a fight, like a boxing match or whatever. The more prepared you are, the more tape you've watched, the more Pilates you've done or whatever exercise, the more conditioning you have, the more confident you're going to be, and you can roll with the punches, if you will, because you're going to get punched in the face. But like if you're good at pre-qualifying, like you said, like qualifying, requalifying, and you come across and it's a no, and it's like no, you end up saying, hey, this isn't a thing. Like you've got that amount of confidence. So psychologically, it's great. But here's the thing, man, and this segues to our next thing. A lot of founders, I'm curious about your opinion. A lot of founders have the sales reluctance. They think they suck at it. And so then they go and they try and hire someone. Okay. Yeah. What are your thoughts around that?
It's a huge mistake, a huge mistake. And and I see it time and time again where, and I understand, like being a founder, being a CEO, there's so much pressure. That's why keeping it small and tight is, for as long as you can, is so crucial. And getting to ICP and product market fit as early as you can with, as a founder-led sales, as long as you can, is so healthy. There are far too many handoffs that absolutely cripple companies. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and you're saying it's better that the founder, this is what I'm thinking logically, it's better for the founder to figure it out themselves first and to be able to do it for their own company. So at least they're generating the revenue and they've got the intellectual capital, the experience to train, that next person. Because I got to tell you, how many founders have I met that said, we hired these salespeople and they're not performing. I don't know, what to do. Well, they haven't even been set up to succeed. The first hire's been set up to fail. That's my thought.
100%. I was literally wanted to write that down and just say 100%. If you can't figure it out as the founder, and if you abandon too early, you're going to miss all the nuances in that early stage where, product market fit. Like if you ask anybody, what, it takes 10 years to build a great company, takes 4 years to know if you even have something. So you're saying that the founder should come off out of sales completely in what, year one, when you're still 3 years away from even knowing if you have something, and 10 years away from like building a great company? That you have to think long term. And the minute you hand something off, and especially founders, this is why it's so easy to do. The founder that has the most anxiety about sales, maybe doesn't understand what it is, never built that founder-led sales motion. Once the disconnect or once the handoff happens, misses all the nuance of the product changing, the market changing, the demand changing, the competition changing, and now it's up to different people that don't have all of that early stage knowledge and belief and everything, right? You got to keep that in as long as you can.
Yeah. And you're missing out, let me take an organization development perspective on this. You're missing out on what builds culture in your company. And so a lot of leaders say, I want a sales culture, type thing, but they haven't put the foundation in, because culture happens when the companies try to fix problems and fighting off to survive through existential threats. And sales is, or lack of sales. So if you get those stories and the founders in there and they're in the trenches and they get those wins and those legendary stories come out, that just inspires everybody else. So it's a long-term investment. Just like you said, 10 years from that moment, you're going to be thanking. Yeah. Okay. We're on the same page, which leads us to the next segment. Okay. So let's say a founder does everything you said, is kicking ass, right? Let's say they get through 2 years and they're selling it, they're making good revenue, and then pow, they get their A round, and now they're expected to scale, and now they have to replace themselves. And I know lots of founders in the opposite problem. They're the best salesperson. They can't get someone in to replace them. And so they're running around doing all this stuff. And they're like, why do I have these people? But they can't strategically scale or reproduce themselves, and the business gets stunted. So what are you telling that founder?
This is one of my favorite problems in all of business, right? So the first thing that you need to do is, to avoid that even happening, you do what we did before, right? You pay attention to what you're saying, you build your process and your methodology early, and you never stop iterating and evolving, right? When that founder gets into the problem, Series A, time to grow, how do we scale? You can't scale a cult of personality. You can't take Jay and make another Jay. You can't take Ed with that beautiful head of hair and get anything close to that, right? So the truth is, you have to be, this is what makes a great coach, being able to see what's in between good, and great, right? The unconscious professional, like a Michael Jordan, who just goes out and just has like the ability to close his eyes and hit shots, and they rarely make good coaches because they don't see the list of things needed to do between being, the B player and the A player. And it's the same with a founder who's being unconsciously competent through the sales journey. You need somebody to come and codify that process. Let's write it down. We got to make sure that this is the methodology. So which behaviors are repeatable? Which behaviors are teachable? Okay, let's teach everybody that. And now we at least have a coaching culture from the beginning, or not the very beginning, but a stage that's early enough that will help you through your Series A, Series B, because Series B is going to be all about growth and expansion. I see a lot of companies that don't do this in Series A, and they actually get a few more charismatic salespeople, and then they do well enough. Then when they really get to the growth mode, they can't scale because it's all cult of personality. All the deals are coming from 20% of the people, right?
Yeah.
80% of the revenue is coming from 20% of the people, and they just can't repeat that. Best salespeople get promoted to manager. They're not managers. It is a song we've all heard a million times.
Oh yeah, and that's the difference between building an asset of your company or just, staying alive and having something, you basically bought yourself a job. I know this other founder talking the other day, and he said, Ed, what we did was we just got really good at HR, and we made our sales, people could come in and out. If it was a revolving door, our process was so strong, we weren't worried about hanging on to that one superstar. If they left, they left. Like it's the next man up, type scenario, which leads me to an interesting question. So curious, do you think that, there's a certain type of personality set that makes someone super good at sales and you need to look for that? Or do you think that everybody can do it? Like, what are your thoughts on nature versus nurture when it comes to sales talent?
I think that the the legend of it takes a certain person to be good at sales is complete bullshit. Anybody who wants to work at it and practice with deep practice and discipline can be very, very good at sales. Are there certain attributes in a human being that lend itself to a successful sales career, and then on top of great discipline and practice will propel them into the top 1%? Absolutely, for sure. But I have seen plenty of people that have none of that DNA, but are so disciplined with process and methodology and have such great attitudes, student mentalities, and work ethic that they propel themselves into the President's Club with very great consistency. This is literally people you'd say they don't even belong in sales, and they're in President's Club because of the discipline and the structure, right, around process and methodology and the learned behaviors. Absolutely. You can grow your own talent with enough practice, deep practice. The fact that like talent is a born thing. Like in some people, maybe I just feel like it's deep practice that is what we should all be focusing on, right? Here's what I think is going to happen in 5 years when everybody sort of wakes up, right? I don't think you're going to be able to find sales manager job postings. It's going to be all sales coaches.
Interesting.
The,
I like
the,
it.
the manager roles will become much more, will rely on our technology to
Exactly.
monitor our activities and processes. If companies are smart, they'll start hiring sales coaches, or they'll start looking internally as to who has the coaching DNA. They'll adopt a great methodology, and they will build a coaching culture from as early on as possible. That's the way you build an unstoppable machine. You hire great talents, you train them up great from the beginning, so you're shortening that ramp time, and then you never let your foot off the gas when it comes to coaching. You can't expect things to stick. It's just not how human beings work.
Yeah.
I mean, if I stop playing this thing, if I stop playing for a month, I feel like I feel like I've regressed years, right? But if I just do 20 minutes a day, every single day, and then some days even more, I am I mean, I make such huge leaps forward. But if I take my foot off the gas, you can feel the regression. It's such a sad thing, but we have to be disciplined with everything we do.
You're right about the coaching. I've got my pal partner. He had a $1 trillion company, financial service company, chase him down, pursue him, and convince him to be a manager. But all he does is coaching. All he does is pump people up, walk them through. Let me listen to your phone calls, everything like that. They found the secret sauce. Furthermore, now he's wrote me in to, spend 20 minutes a week with his team teaching things like emotional intelligence and everything like that. He's always thinking of different things to bring in. He's like, they're sick of listening to me, we got to mix it up. Can you come
Yeah.
talk about this? So it's constant. That's the reinforcement. Okay, so I get it. Now here's another question. A lot of times I see people looking for a salesperson, a business development person, what have you, and they say we need someone who already has a ton of industry contacts. And I get it. The reason you want all those industry contacts, well, at the same time, a lot of times those people can be divas, they're very expensive and, things like that. But the acceleration to already be able to pick up the phone and have a personal relationship, people in the industry you want to sell to. What are your thoughts on that approach that a lot of companies take?
On the book of business specifically, or because there's something also related that I feel like is even more ubiquitous, which is they need industry experience.
Yeah.
Like you have to have sold SaaS, or you have to have sold in this, the fintech. You have to know fintech. The book of business, I don't. A book of business, if you want to go pay for a book of business, then it would be weird for me to say that doesn't make sense. But on the experience in a certain industry piece, which is similar, I always go for talent over experience in an industry.
Yeah.
The the best salespeople that I've worked with in my career and life have been successful in many different industries and verticals.
Okay. Yeah. And quite often, instead of going for the superstar with that experience, who's like a total mercenary, they'll find
Yeah.
someone with the qualities who have been successful in something else, who show self-starter, they're lifelong learners, they've learned how to learn, type thing. And because the founders that got experience and they've, like you said, codified the process and methodology, they're able to just put in a system and they say, just be you, but
Yes.
let us handle all the technical stuff and give you the tools to do so. Okay, good.
100%. 100%. Set
Okay.
your up, hire great people, and train them, because the bad habit thing, the diva thing, is absolutely real, and it's
Yeah.
just when you're paying for a really seasoned salesperson to run the risk of having those issues of whatever it may be, it's catastrophic, right? Like one thing that we can all agree about sales is that we don't have time to mess around and make mistakes.
Yeah, I explain it like that. You've got zombies and you got vampires. Zombies just mindlessly drone, and then you got vampires who look really pretty, great performers, but they're solo artists. They emotionally drain your company because of their vanity, all that stuff. Okay, so let's say I've done this. So I've got experience, my company, A round, I need to scale. I've codified my process, my methodology. I'm constantly iterating, for product market fit, just making sure I know where I stand. So how do I actually go find hire number one for my sales? Like, is it ask around, LinkedIn, put out an ad? Like, explicitly, how would someone go do this?
Hire number one is important. I think that if you have a network, which most people do in these situations, look in your network, try to find somebody that you can trust, that is a self-starter, that is excited by startup life, that is understands what's at stake, that loves the fact that, you know, change is constant, right? And the only thing that's constant is change. You need the right person, wherever they come from, whether you're going to a recruiter or you're searching, you know, LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever it may be. The characteristics that you're looking for are great attitude, great work ethic, learners, right? Like lifelong learners with a high deal of curiosity, people that understand the grit and the stamina, and people that can adapt, right? Like that understand that like this is a game of, if it's not the smartest that survive, it's the most adaptable species. It's always been that way, and it always will be that way, right? The quickest to adapt are the ones that survive. So that is where you want to build that those first hires are so important. Whether it's the first sales leader or the first individual contributor, either one, those attributes should be there in both.
Okay. Hire for attitude, train for skill. Look in your network. I say go look in the long tail. I don't even advise using recruiters. I know that's going to make some of my colleagues super mad, but don't look for recruiters unless you're specifically looking for technical expertise or you're willing to hire a mercenary. But we found salespeople in all nooks and crannies and, personal relationships. If you build a great culture, people want to come work for you anyway, which, I understand. So, okay, so let's move on here because I want to give you some time to kind of talk about the stuff that you do. All right, so now I've got a sales organization. I've built this. Let's say I've got a team of 10 to 50 people, and they're
Yeah.
selling, and I'm looking at the numbers, and we're just not trending in the right direction. I have no idea. I'm looking at giving my sales manager the side eye. He's, we deal with this all the time. They're telling me all the reasons, the market conditions suck and the reasons they're not performing. And I'm sitting here going, well, then what are we supposed to do to take it for what it's worth? So let's say I'm dealing with those exact same problems that you talked about, in your pitch. I got poor conversion, slow velocity, and my salespeople are turning over and over again. Now, instead of hiring you, okay, we're going to get to that in a moment. What should I do internally as a manager or CEO?
It's very, very simple.
Okay.
Listen to the sales calls.
I like it.
That's it. Just listen. Just spend a couple days listening to calls. And if you are a qualified sales manager, you're going to know what's wrong, what's broken.
Yeah.
What's working and what's broken. Just listen to the calls, right?
Yeah.
With the sales reps and with the leaders, everybody's got to be on the same page, right? You want that circle of information, like from the front line that goes through customer success, operations, finance, even, problems that your sales team will hear, and customer issues and things that are working, all that is incoming into the front line. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about that circle too, is if you're just listening all the time, so much of that is getting picked up. So the product gets better, processes are streamlined. I mean, my business partner, Mike, one of the things I love about him was he's an engineer, right? Software engineer. What did he do? He took his desk and he moved it right into the middle of the fucking sales bullpen.
Yeah.
The smartest shit ever. And I just love him to death for that. I mean, he's like, I'm here now. I hear everything that's not working. So now I know you didn't need me to build that. Like, he was in the midst of it being like, oh yeah, if I build this, you'll get more sales. This is what the customers are saying. I mean, it's just so smart. But yeah, listen to calls. And that's, why there's such a problem is a lot of people just don't have the time, or they're not prioritizing it. Right.
Yeah.
It's gotta
Yeah.
be a problem.
Yeah. Go investigate. I did that by accident one time. You just reminded me. One time I was onboarding a COO and I was thinking he was going to be the CEO. and I was the CEO. Well, I was the executive director. I gave him my office, and I moved in the cubicle with our telemarketing, person, and being there, it weirded them out. But luckily they let me hang out. I learned so much, learned
Yeah.
a ton. Like, you talk about adjusting the methodology and the process, the ideas were coming quick. So okay, that's awesome. All right. What if, so last question before we get into kind of what you do. What if I end up discovering I'm in this 80-20 zone? 20% of my people are performers, everybody else is dead weight. 20% are creating 80% of the business. What do I do?
Well, you're most likely, if you're in that situation, you're trying to grow your business off of cult of personality, right? You're
Gotcha.
saying, Jay just has the it factor, find more Jays. Well, that's not how you build a business. You've got to codify the things that Jay is doing well that can be taught to everybody else. And so many companies just don't have that documented, and they're not disciplined about it. And so if it doesn't formalize, you can never really leverage it, right?
Sure.
You got to pay it. This is like, it's blocking and tackling, right? Like, I hope that when managers and C suites are talking about sales, they're not saying things like, we need more sales this quarter.
Yeah.
They should be saying, we need to qualify the budget better. Can you understand? This is blocking and tackling. We know we need more sales. How do you get there? The power of that message trickling from the C level down to everybody. Do you know how empowering that is? When the salespeople know that there is such a deep level of investigating going on, and that the C level and everybody cares so much about getting everybody better at their craft, that they're so micro focused on, these are the marching orders for this quarter, better discovery calls. What does that mean? We're going to qualify budget better. We're going to get the decision process requalified on every single call, because we know that's where we're breaking down, right? That's it. That's what we're focusing on. And you don't talk about more numbers, more calls. It's so demoralizing when it's just more sales, more calls. It's like, really? That's going to solve the problem? Just more shitty behavior?
Yeah.
A really great mentor of mine, who I owe so much, to, and was just so brilliant in this stance, right? Was when I was coaching a lot of salespeople, some of the managers, this is a really large group of salespeople, some of the managers were like, I don't want my salespeople off the phones. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, that's messed up. And what he said was, bullshit. They don't even get to be on the phone until they've gone through Jay's training. They have to earn the right to be on the phone. Why are we putting them in the batting box when they don't know how to hit a curveball?
Wow.
You know what I mean? It was the opposite. He said, no. They don't even get there. They're burning through leads.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're doing, but you don't want to take them off. It should be the opposite. It should be like, wah, wah, wah. Everybody stand up, hang the phones up, right? Get into the training room. You're not coming out until you know what the hell you're doing. And that's essentially what he did. And guess what? 300 million to 600 million in revenue was what would happen. I mean,
That's
it was
culture.
just,
That's
and the
culture.
culture was insane. It was so beautiful. It just worked so well, and revenue, everything, morale. I mean, it was just great. It was,
It's kind of
but
like who the CEO of Starbucks shut everything down to have everybody train on how to make a latte, or something like that, right? Let's just break it back down to the basics.
right.
And that's what they did.
Where a lot of people are just like, no, just keep giving them. They're ordering lattes, but it's okay. You're giving them soy milk, and that's fine. Just keep doing that. Just do it a lot, and eventually, what will happen is you'll serve a latte by accident.
Yeah. Okay, so So for everybody who's been listening, always appreciate people who listen to the end of these things, and getting some really great nuggets. All this stuff, what we try and do is, get everybody the information that even if you don't talk to me or Jay, you've got some nuggets, some actionable insights that you can take with you. But let's say, okay, someone's out there listening, says, we're going to give you your contact information out there, and says, okay, I need help. Those three types of people, what are you offering? How can you help the early stage founder, the founder that's just, trying to grow and start the sales organization, and then the, C level who already has an established, mature organization?
Yeah, for the early stagers, they should come to startups and then hit us up in office hours and get in founder groups, right? Because I'll always donate my time to help early stage founders, and or just reach out directly. Like I give. So for anybody else that's looking for the sales, they want to open the box and sales coaches jump out and just go, do their thing. Reach out to us. That's what we do. We've put sales coaching in a box. We've built a platform to track everything so that when companies make investments in this, we're not just coming in and saying, yeah, we're going to train everybody and here's a bunch of PDFs and PowerPoints. We're actually going to show you in our platform which behaviors are correlating to wins and losses, right? It's time that sales coaching and training all becomes more data driven instead of just, this is what everybody always teaches everybody, and let's just do that again. No, let's actually see if, I think it's actually a really humble way of doing it, right? I don't want to be training you on something today, assume that it works, and then just assume that it works for somebody else tomorrow. No, let's track that. Let's look at your wins and losses. Let's look at what you were trained on. Let's analyze how well you performed it. And if you did it and you performed it well and it equaled a win, and we keep seeing that pattern, I think we've recognized what performance intelligence really is, right? This is your training. This is your coaching motion moving forward. These are the true key performance indicators.
Yeah.
So
So you're going to help me codify. You're going to help me do all those things. And you say you love listening to sales calls. So I've got one of these big sales organizations. I record all my calls. I can just give you all my calls. You'll listen to them and tell me, okay, you love that sort of stuff.
send them. That's what we want. We want your calls.
Bless your heart, man.
Yeah, and yeah, we're gonna quantify what's always been qualitative, right? We're actually gonna put some data behind training and coaching has always been very qualitative, right? It doesn't need to be. It's time to make it more empirical. But yeah, man, and thank you. I appreciate your time and just every time that I've called you and been in a tough spot, and you've always been so generous and amazing and giving me such great advice in some really low moments, and especially the last one. What did I say to you? I'm like, all right, I'm gonna vent. Get ready. Hold on.
That's the reason we're in community. And dude, you make it easy to work with. So it's good, man. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it is. It is always a pleasure, which is, not, you can't always say that. So
It's true.
Appreciate you. This was lovely, man. Really appreciate it. Good to see you.
All right. So for everybody who's watching, I'm going to put Jay's information. Reach out. As he said, join us up on startups.com. We're always ready to give up, full advice. But, I just want to encourage everyone, make the investment into your sales organization, which leads to sales culture and really who you are as a leader of your organization. If you're a founder looking out there, and, I think I can speak on Jay's behalf that, Jay's willing to have that upfront conversation with you on which direction to go. So check it out. Check out what Jay's doing at conversioncoach.ai. Like I said, put all the information. Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Ed. Great to see you, buddy. Take care.